Listen carefully because this message is not random and it is not an accident that you are hearing these words right now. This is the moment heaven wants your attention, because God is saying to you today that the person who hurt you did not interrupt your destiny, did not cancel your calling, did not erase your future, and did not close the doors that he already decided to open for you long before anyone ever misunderstood you, betrayed you, ignored you, rejected you, or walked away from you. And I know there were nights when you questioned yourself and you wondered if what they said about you was true, you wondered if what they did to you permanently damaged something inside your spirit, you wondered if maybe their silence meant your purpose had ended before it even began. But God is speaking clearly right now, and He is saying that what they meant as an ending He already planned as a turning point. What they thought was your weakness He already marked as your preparation. What they believed would stop you He already designed to strengthen you, because your destiny was never placed in human hands, your future was never dependent on someone else's approval, your calling was never attached to someone else's loyalty, and your purpose cannot be cancelled by people who were only assigned to be temporary characters in a permanent story that God Himself is writing over your life. And even though their actions hurt deeply and even though their words echoed louder than encouragement for a season, and even though their absence left questions that still try to return to your mind sometimes, God says none of it surprised Him and none of it changed His plan and none of it reduced what He placed inside of you before you were even born, because destiny does not begin when people support you and destiny does not end when people reject you and destiny does not pause when someone betrays you. Destiny moves forward because God moves forward and He never writes unfinished stories over chosen lives. And right now there is something shifting inside your spirit as you hear this message, because God is reminding you that you survived something that should have stopped you but it did not stop you, you carried something that should have broken you but it did not break you, you walked through something that should have defeated you but it did not defeat you. And the reason it did not defeat you is because your future was never depending on their decision, your future was depending on His promise, and God is saying that while they were walking away from you He was walking toward your next season, while they were closing doors behind you He was opening doors ahead of you, while they were speaking against you He was speaking over you. And there were prayers you whispered through tears that nobody else heard, but heaven heard every single one of them, and heaven recorded every moment of your faith when you chose to keep moving forward even while your heart was still healing from what they did. And God is saying that the same pain you thought delayed you actually developed you, the same rejection you thought disqualified you actually redirected you, the same silence you thought meant abandonment actually protected you from places that were never meant to carry your destiny forward. And there is a reason you are still standing right now, and there is a reason you are still believing right now, and there is a reason something inside you refuses to give up even after everything that happened, because God never invests purpose inside someone He plans to abandon halfway through the journey, and the person who hurt you may never understand what they did to your heart, but God fully understands what He placed inside. Listen carefully, because what you are about to understand in this moment is something the enemy hoped you would never realize. The pain you experienced was never permission for your destiny to stop, but preparation for your destiny to accelerate, and the same person who tried to silence your confidence, confuse your calling, and weaken your faith actually stepped into a role they never understood they were playing, because when God writes your story, even betrayal becomes a bridge and not a barrier. Even rejection becomes redirection and not destruction. Even the nights you cried alone were not empty moments but sacred construction seasons where heaven was strengthening parts of your spirit that success alone could never build, and that is why you survived what should have broken you. That is why your heart still believes when logic says it shouldn't. That is why something inside you keeps whispering keep going even after disappointment, because your destiny was never attached to their approval, their loyalty, their apology, or their understanding. Your destiny was attached to God's promise long before they ever entered your life, and long after they exited your story His plan continued moving forward with unstoppable precision and divine timing that no human interference could cancel. And what you must recognize right now is that sometimes God allows certain people to reveal their intentions not to hurt you permanently but to free you strategically, because if they had stayed longer they would have delayed the door that is already opening in front of you. And the truth is they did not stop your progress, they exposed your strength. They did not erase your purpose, they revealed your assignment. They did not destroy your confidence, they activated a deeper level of faith inside you that could only be discovered through pressure. And maybe you wondered why someone you trusted changed suddenly. Maybe you asked why loyalty turned into distance without explanation. Maybe you questioned why support became silence exactly when you needed encouragement the most. But what you could not see at that time was that God was separating what looked connected but was never truly aligned with your future. He was protecting doors that your heart was not strong enough yet to walk through alone. He was teaching you how to depend on Him instead of depending on people whose presence was temporary while your calling is permanent, and that is why even now something inside you feels different, because you are not the same person who entered that painful season. You are someone stronger, someone clearer, someone spiritually sharper and emotionally wiser than before, and the enemy hoped your disappointment would make you quit quietly, but instead your silence became strength, your tears became prayer, your waiting became preparation. And your loneliness became alignment with the exact path heaven designed specifically for you. And what makes this moment powerful is that the same story they thought ended your confidence actually introduced your transformation. The same chapter they believed would define your weakness became evidence of your resilience. And the same betrayal they expected to destroy your trust became the turning point that deepened your relationship with God in a way comfort never could have done. Because destiny is not decided by who walks away from you, destiny is decided by who walks with you through fire and still sees purpose on the other side. And God never allowed that pain to enter your life without attaching purpose to it. He never allowed confusion without also preparing clarity ahead of you. He never allowed rejection without already designing acceptance in places you have not reached yet. And right now, even if you cannot see every step clearly, you are already closer to the breakthrough than the breakdown that once tried to define you. Because heaven does not waste seasons and God does not abandon assignments halfway through their completion. And the truth someone needs to hear right now is this: the person who hurt you did not delay your destiny, they accelerated your separation from distractions that looked meaningful but were never meant to travel with you into your next level. And sometimes the hardest realization is understanding that loyalty from the wrong people can become the greatest delay to the right future. Which is why God removed what you tried to keep, because He was protecting what you are about to receive. And even though you questioned why things changed so suddenly, what actually happened was alignment began moving faster than your expectations could understand, and heaven started positioning people, opportunities, and moments that will match the version of you that survived that difficult season instead of the version of you that entered it. Because your destiny requires strength, your calling requires clarity, your assignment requires courage, and God will never allow the wrong voices to stay long enough to weaken the purpose He already placed inside your life. So if you are still wondering whether what happened was loss or protection, understand this clearly today: nothing that is meant for your future can be permanently removed by someone who was never meant to stay in it. And what God is preparing right now behind the scenes is greater than what left your life in front of your eyes. Which means the story is not ending where the pain happened, it is beginning where your faith decided to keep moving forward even when your heart felt tired and uncertain and misunderstood. Because destiny does not stop when people leave. Destiny moves faster when God clears the path ahead of you and prepares the door that no one will be able to close once it opens for your life. Before this next part begins, you need to understand something powerful that most people never realize until much later in life. The pain you went through was never permission for your destiny to stop. It was preparation for your destiny to accelerate, because what looked like betrayal on the surface was actually separation orchestrated by God behind the scenes. And while you were wondering why certain people misunderstood you, talked about you, walked away from you, or even tried to block your progress, Heaven was quietly removing voices that would have confused your direction and hands that would have slowed your movement, because sometimes the biggest obstacle to your future is not the enemy outside your life but the wrong people inside your life who cannot recognize what God placed on you. Sparkles, there were moments when you questioned yourself more than anyone else questioned you. Moments when you replayed conversations in your mind wondering if you should have spoken differently, trusted differently, or stayed silent instead of believing too quickly. But what you did not realize then is what you are beginning to understand now. God never allowed their actions to define your identity. He only allowed their actions to reveal their position in your journey. Because some people were assigned to walk beside you temporarily but not permanently, and their exit was not punishment. It was protection. Folded hands. The truth is, the person who hurt you expected your confidence to collapse. They expected your motivation to weaken, they expected your faith to become quieter, but something unexpected happened instead. You kept moving, even when it felt slow, even when it felt lonely, even when nobody clapped for your progress, and that quiet movement is what confused them the most, because they thought the storm would stop you when the storm actually strengthened you. And what they never understood is that when God places a calling over someone's life, opposition cannot cancel it. Delay cannot erase it, and misunderstanding cannot destroy it. Fire. There is a reason you are still here with the same vision inside your heart that refused to disappear even after disappointment tried to rewrite your story, because destiny is not something people can vote against. Destiny is something heaven already approved before anyone ever had an opinion about you, and while they were focused on your temporary setbacks, God was focused on your permanent assignment, which means every closed door you experienced was not rejection of your future but redirection toward the exact place your purpose needed you to stand. Some people thought your silence meant weakness, but your silence was actually discipline. Some people thought your distance meant fear, but your distance was actually wisdom. And some people thought your patience meant you had lost your opportunity, but your patience was actually alignment with divine timing. Because when God prepares a door that no one can close, He also prepares a version of you strong enough to walk through it without doubting whether you belong there. Dizzy and what is happening right now in your life, even if you cannot fully see it yet, is that pieces are moving behind the scenes in ways you never expected. Conversations are happening that you never heard. opportunities are forming that you never requested, and paths are opening that you never planned. Because destiny does not always arrive with noise, sometimes it arrives quietly. While you are simply staying faithful one step at a time, and the same people who thought they could interrupt your progress are slowly realizing that what God started in your life cannot be stopped by human opinion, jealousy, misunderstanding, or distance, because when heaven writes a story over someone's future, no one on earth has the authority to erase it. Glowing star. So if there is still a small part of you wondering whether what happened to you changed your direction, listen carefully. It changed your surroundings, it changed your circle, it changed your perspective, but it never changed your destination, because what God placed ahead of you is still ahead of you, and the season you are walking through right now is not the ending people predicted for you, it is the beginning God already prepared for you long before anyone tried to stand in your way. There is something powerful happening in your life right now that you cannot fully see yet because heaven rarely explains everything before it moves, and the reason God has been so quiet in certain areas where you expected immediate answers is not because He ignored your prayers but because He was rearranging people, opportunities, timing, and hidden doors behind the scenes in ways that required silence to protect the outcome that has your name written on it since before you were born. And what hurt the most about the season you just walked through was not only what someone did to you but the confusion that followed when you wondered why God allowed it to happen at all. Yet the truth is that what looked like abandonment was actually divine separation. What looked like rejection was actually redirection, and what looked like delay was actually preparation for something that would have been impossible for you to carry earlier because your strength, your faith, your confidence, and your clarity were still being built in secret places where only God could see your growth. You were never losing ground the way it felt like you were losing ground. You were being repositioned, and the moment you stopped chasing what was leaving you was the exact moment heaven started releasing what was meant to find you, because destiny does not run away from you when you are walking with God. Destiny moves toward you even when the path looks empty, even when the phone stays silent, even when doors stay closed longer than expected, and even when people misunderstand your heart and your intentions, because God never needed their agreement to complete what He promised you. There were nights when you questioned whether your prayers were still being heard. There were mornings when you woke up carrying a weight you could not explain to anyone else, and there were moments when you almost convinced yourself that maybe the dream inside you was too big or too late or too broken to still happen. But heaven watched every tear you tried to hide and every time you kept believing when it would have been easier to give up. And what you thought was a small act of faith was actually a loud declaration in the spiritual realm that you still trusted God even without proof in front of you. The person who hurt you thought they were closing something in your life permanently. But what they did not understand was that they were only stepping out of a story they were never meant to finish with you, and sometimes the reason people leave is not because you failed but because their assignment in your life expired, and when assignments expire heaven begins transitions that look painful on earth but look necessary from eternity's perspective, and the moment you understand that truth you stop blaming yourself for what someone else was never meant to stay long enough to help you complete. God is not rebuilding your life the way it used to look before the disappointment happened. He is building something stronger than what existed before the disappointment arrived, because restoration in God's hands never returns you to the same level you were on earlier. restoration always moves you forward into a higher version of yourself that carries more wisdom, more discernment, more confidence, and more authority than the version of you that entered the storm in the first place. There is a reason you survived what should have broken you emotionally. There is a reason your heart still carries hope even after betrayal tried to silence it, and there is a reason doors are beginning to shift again even though nothing around you seemed to move for so long, because heaven never wastes pain when that pain belongs to someone walking toward purpose. And the same season that confused you is now becoming the evidence that God was guiding you even when you could not recognize His direction clearly. Something new is aligning right now that does not depend on the approval of the people who misunderstood you and does not require permission from the individuals who underestimated you, because what God is preparing for you next will stand on His authority and not on human agreement. And when that door opens, you will recognize immediately why the previous ones had to close, even though closing them felt like losing something important at the time. You are closer than you realize to a breakthrough that will make the waiting season make sense, and the reason your spirit feels different lately is because something is shifting before it becomes visible, and heaven often lets you feel the change internally before you see the change externally, so that when the opportunity finally appears you will have the courage to walk through it without hesitation and without fear of repeating the same pain again. The enemy wanted you to believe that what happened to you defined your future, but God wants you to understand that what happened to you only refined your future, because nothing that was meant to destroy you actually succeeded in stopping the calling on your life. And the fact that you are still here listening right now is proof that your story is still moving forward exactly the way heaven planned, even when parts of the journey felt uncertain and unpredictable. Very soon you are going to see why the timing mattered more than the speed, why the separation mattered more than the comfort, and why the silence mattered more than the explanations you were asking for earlier, because God was not delaying your destiny, He was protecting it until the right moment arrived for it to unfold without interference from people who were never meant to walk into the next chapter with you. And when that moment arrives, you will not have to force anything to happen, because what is truly meant for you never requires you to beg for space in your own destiny. It simply arrives with confirmation, peace, clarity, and strength that lets you move forward, knowing that what God started in your life cannot be stopped by anyone who tried to stand in your way before. The moment where everything begins to shift in a way you did not expect, because the pain you carried for so long was never meant to end your story but to introduce you to the strength God placed inside you before anyone ever tried to break your confidence. And even though the person who hurt you thought they were closing a chapter of your life, what they were actually doing was pushing you toward a door that only God could open. And now you are starting to notice something powerful happening inside your spirit, because the same rejection that once made you question your worth is now becoming the evidence that God was protecting your purpose. The same silence that once confused you is now revealing clarity. The same delay that once discouraged you is now positioning you exactly where your destiny can no longer be blocked. And this is the moment where many people around you will begin to feel the shift before they even understand it, because when God begins to elevate someone who stayed faithful through betrayal, there is a spiritual authority that starts to surround them, and people who underestimated you will suddenly realize that what they tried to stop was never theirs to control in the first place. And you must understand something very important right now: the reason your story did not collapse when they walked away is because your future was never attached to their approval, your calling was never connected to their loyalty, and your destiny was never limited by their opinion. about you, because God never builds your purpose on unstable foundations. He builds it on faith, endurance, and obedience, and that is why you are still standing today, even after nights when you thought you would never recover, even after moments when your confidence felt shattered, even after seasons when you wondered if your prayers were being heard. Heaven was already moving behind the scenes, preparing the next chapter of your life, and the reason you are reading this moment right now is because God is reminding you that what looked like loss was actually alignment, what looked like separation was actually protection, and what looked like an ending was actually the beginning of the strongest version of you that has ever existed. And there is something else happening that you may not fully see yet, but it is already unfolding quietly, because when someone hurts you and expects you to stay broken, they are never prepared for the day God restores your strength and multiplies your influence, and that day is closer than you think, because God does not waste pain. He transforms it into purpose. He does not ignore betrayal. He uses it to redirect your path, and He does not allow injustice to remain unanswered. He turns it into testimony, and that testimony is going to reach people you have never met yet, people who are waiting for proof that survival is possible after heartbreak, people who are searching for courage after disappointment, people who are praying for confirmation that their story is not over, and your journey is becoming that confirmation right now, even if you cannot fully see it yet, because every time you chose to keep believing when it would have been easier to give up, every time you kept praying when it felt like nothing was changing, every time you refused to let bitterness replace your faith, heaven recorded your obedience, and God honors obedience in ways that surprise even the strongest believers. And the next season of your life will not look like the last one, because God is not repeating your pain. He is rewriting your direction, and the people who thought they had the final word over your story will soon realize they were only present for a temporary chapter, not the conclusion. And when your breakthrough becomes visible, it will not just change your circumstances, it will change your confidence, your relationships, your opportunities, and your understanding of how powerful God's timing truly is, because there is a moment coming when everything that once confused you will suddenly make sense, and you will recognize that every delay, every disappointment, every closed door was guiding you away from what could not hold your future and toward what was always meant for you. And that realization will bring a peace so strong that even the memory of what hurt you will no longer have authority over your emotions, because once God restores what people tried to damage, your perspective changes, your strength multiplies, and your path becomes clear in a way that no one can interrupt anymore. And that is why this season is not about looking backward at what was lost, but about preparing your heart for what is arriving, because something greater than what you expected is already moving toward you right now, even if you cannot see it yet. And the truth is, the person who hurt you never had the power to stop your destiny. They only revealed how unstoppable God's plan for your life has always been. And what God is doing in your life right now is something most people around you cannot see yet, because divine preparation never looks impressive while it is happening. It looks quiet, hidden, even confusing at times, but heaven is never confused about your future. And the same moment that felt like rejection to you was actually redirection, designed to move you away from the voices that tried to shrink your calling and toward the doors that were already assigned to your name before you were even born. Because the truth is, the person who hurt you thought they were closing your story, but God was only turning the page. And what they meant as an ending became the exact place where your destiny began to accelerate in ways you never imagined possible. And that is why you must stop measuring your life by what people did to you and start measuring it by what God is doing through you right now. Because destiny is not fragile, and your purpose is not dependent on someone else's approval, someone else's loyalty, or someone else's understanding. Your purpose is anchored in heaven and protected by a plan that cannot be rewritten by betrayal, cannot be erased by disappointment, and cannot be delayed by the opinions of people who never carried your assignment in the first place. And the reason the pain felt so deep is because you were standing at the edge of something powerful, and the enemy always attacks hardest when breakthrough is closest. But what you didn't realize in that moment is that God was already positioning the right people to find you after the wrong people left you. He was already preparing opportunities that would open exactly when the distractions closed, and He was already strengthening your spirit so that when the next door appeared you would walk through it with confidence instead of fear, because sometimes the greatest evidence that God is moving in your life is not what He adds but what He removes. And what looked like loss was actually protection. What looked like silence was actually strategy, and what looked like delay was actually alignment happening behind the scenes in ways your eyes could not yet understand. And now you are stepping into a season where things will begin to make sense, not because everything suddenly becomes easy but because your spirit finally recognizes that God never left your side during the hardest chapters. He was guiding your steps even when your heart felt heavy and your prayers felt unanswered. He was building strength inside you that the next level of your destiny requires, because the doors that are opening in front of you now are not ordinary doors. They are doors connected to influence, purpose, restoration, and favor that cannot be explained by coincidence. And the people who doubted you will not be able to deny what God is about to do through your life, because the same story they thought ended in weakness is about to become a testimony of power, and the same voice they ignored is about to speak with authority, and the same path they thought was blocked is about to open wider than you expected, because when God decides to move in your life, no person can stop what He started and no mistake can cancel what He promised. And this is the moment where you must choose to stop looking backward at what hurt you and start looking forward at what is calling you, because your destiny has been waiting for you to step fully into faith instead of fear. And once you take that step, you will begin to notice doors opening that nobody around you can explain, connections forming that nobody planned, and opportunities appearing that nobody predicted. And that is when you will understand that everything you went through was not wasted but woven together into a story that proves God was always working even when you thought everything was falling apart. And what is coming next in your life is not small, it is not ordinary, and it is not accidental. It is the beginning of a season where restoration speaks louder than rejection, purpose speaks louder than pain, and destiny finally speaks louder than the voices that tried to convince you that your story was already over.